Come on, Eileen, get on it. Oh, God, I just said come on, Eileen.
Shura, shura.
What's good? Welcome back. We are here for another episode of the newest Olympian. My name is Mike Schubert. I am the titular newest Olympian. I've never read the Percy Jackson books before. I'm going through them for the very first time now in a quest to see, is this the YA series that we've all been sleeping on? And I'm not going to be doing this alone. I am joined on this quest by my guest for this episode. He is the co-host of Tipping Pitches and a podcast producer at The Ringer. It's Bobby Wagner. Bobby, how's it going?
Shubes. What's up, man? Such an honor to be here. I'm so excited to talk about Percy Jackson. What a wonderful YA series, and what a wonderful person to talk about it with.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. I'm excited to have you on as well. I feel like you are the exact age demographic for this book series. So did you read it once it came out? What is your fandom behind Percy Jackson?
I did. I'm 25. I read it right around when it came out. I'm not sure if I actually read it right when it came out or if I got hip to it a couple years later. But there was definitely I feel like this happens a lot in people's specific middle schools where there's a wave of what fiction series you want to read and all your friends are reading at the same time. So I read it along with a couple of my best friends in middle school at the time. I don't remember exactly what grade I started it in because I was reading 1 through 5 kind of as they were coming out in the, succeeding years or whatever. So yeah, I was reading it at the time. And this is my first time reading it since then.
Okay.
So I am coming to it with brand new eyes, and I have had 15 years of a jaded existence since then, but it's still wonderful, and it's still a lot of fun. The one thing that really jumped off the page immediately was just how funny it is.
Yeah.
I remembered it more for the Greek mythology aspect because that was a lot of stories that I hadn't heard yet. I hadn't taken any Greek mythology classes in school yet. So I was coming to this new, the subject material is obviously very interesting. Rick Riordan makes it very fun alongside that, but I think the writing, the prose itself is way funnier and more accessible than I even ever really realized at the time.
100%. Percy is very funny, both as a character and as a narrator. And it's a very self-aware book where when a ridiculous thing happens, usually narrator Percy will call it out. And it makes it more fun, and it makes you feel like you are in the story because when something confusing takes place, narrator Percy is also confused, so you feel kinship of, okay, cool, it's not just me. This is a strange thing that's going on right now.
Yeah. It almost reminded me of the way that I was attracted to the Holden Caulfield voice a little bit. It's just very direct, talking right at you, kind of deadpan at times. I did really enjoy these first, I'm through 12 chapters again on my reread, so these first 12 chapters.
Totally, yeah. Holden Caulfield was an interesting case for me where I started to like him, and then as the book went on, I slowly just became so frustrated with him.
I mean, he's the most annoying. But isn't that the case, though, for a lot of series where the main character is the most annoying character? Percy Jackson less so, but, I heard you talking on episodes 1 and 2 of this podcast just about how it took you to book 7 to like Harry Potter. I'm still waiting on when I like Harry Potter.
Yes, I have high hopes for Percy not getting on my nerves. And there's specific examples in this chapter that bring me to that conclusion. So I already like him right now, and I have high hopes for continuing to like him as the series goes on. But let's get right into it. Let's get into chapter 9, which is called I Am Offered a Quest, which made me very excited. This is a very different chapter title because usually it's vague things that sound absolutely ridiculous, and you're wondering, how is this going to happen? This is a very direct chapter title. It's pretty succinct and you know what's going to happen, but it's a very cool thing because quests have been much hyped.
This is definitely a demarcating point in the book because from this point forward, and we'll talk about it as we talk about these next couple chapters, but from this point forward, it becomes almost like a video game where you get given the quest and then you go to successive stages and you face successive challenges. It definitely pivots from, washing you over in this world that they're building to, all right, plot time.
Yes, a video game is a very good comparison that I didn't think of at first, but yes, Camp Half-Blood is kind of like the tutorial level where you start to learn everything.
I envisioned it exactly like a video game on the reread because where there's these non-playable characters where you're walking around and they're just kind of saying a set line to you, and then you walk away from them at the pier, and then now you're at the houses and they're like, here's your, natural born enemy in House Ares or whatever.
And it is also much like a video game like that where you have to talk to a bunch of different people because a lot of the plot is, oh, hey, I need to go do this thing. Go talk to this person about this. And then Percy goes over and talks to Chiron. Oh, I have to go teach a course. Go find Annabeth and learn about this.
Yep, straight up. It's like, all right, time to learn Greek. And you're like, do I have to do this?
When we last left off, Percy Jackson was confirmed to be the son of Poseidon, making me, big prediction boy, very
You nailed
happy.
that one.
Yeah, I nailed it, but also, like, was it that hard? I don't think it was that hard.
Dude steps in the water. He's like, I feel good.
I feel like that would have been a harder prediction, maybe if I read these right when they came out. But even though I was avoiding spoilers, I do feel like there was enough stuff around Percy Jackson. There's enough water in pictures of stuff that made sense. So I don't want to take too many laps about this. I will be making some very bold predictions when we get to Oracle stuff soon.
Okay.
So we'll see if any of those pan out. And if I'm right about those, I'll feel much happier. But yes, he has been confirmed.
When I was reading this when I was like 11, I was like, man, maybe I should just go step in the water, see if I feel good. Because I wanted to see myself in the main character, obviously. And then I realized I hate swimming and I suck at it. So I am not a son of Poseidon.
Oh, no. Well, maybe you're a son of someone else and you can do cool stuff. So it's the next morning. Chiron puts Percy into cabin 3, and now he gets to basically call his own shots for activities and make his own schedule, which feels like not the best system for someone who's brand new. I feel like they could have done something, but I guess rules are rules and only children of Poseidon can be in cabin 3. Just felt like not a great logistical decision.
Not my memory of summer camp.
Have you gone to sleepaway camps and stuff? I was a sports camp only boy.
I've been to sleepaway basketball camps.
Oh God, the best of both worlds.
Yeah, in the Pocono Mountains in Pennsylvania.
Gosh, that sounds phenomenal, man.
It was a lot of fun. You learn a lot about life when you're stuck in a cabin with 12, 14-year-olds from wherever across the United States for a week. People feel very freed in that scenario.
Now, Percy's on the same line of thinking that I was at. He says, quote, and I was absolutely miserable. So he's not stoked about lack of direction. Another reason why he's upset is he just started to feel like he was a part of something. He started to feel like he was finally a normal kid that could fit in, but now he feels separated, much like he did anytime he had to move schools. No one is talking to him about the Hellhound, but Percy thinks that everyone is probably talking about it behind his back. And the attack has proved, 1, that he's the son of Poseidon, and 2, that a monster would stop at nothing to attack him. Other campers, because of this, start to steer clear of Percy, and no one in Cabin 11 would sword spar with him. After hearing what he did to the Ares folks in Capture the Flag, they're a bit afraid of him, so the only person that he can do lessons with is Luke, who's ramped up the rigor, A, knowing what Percy is up against, and B, he wants Percy to be the best. He wants to make him as strong as he can be. I love Luke so much.
Yeah, where have we heard that before, right? Mr. Brunner wanted a similar thing for him in the first couple chapters before he realized why. And now you're starting to see some of the figures that are going to demand the highest of him before his quest.
It's really nice. It's really nice. So Annabeth still teaches Percy Greek, but she seems to be perturbed by Percy being the son of Poseidon. And this is where I realized, and I was confused, why would Poseidon claim Percy? Doesn't that announce to the world, oh, hey, by the way, I broke that oath we were supposed to break. My bad. But soon we will learn why he did this. But in my notes here, I was just throwing lots of question marks of, wait a second, why did he do this?
Mike, you know by now that a common theme throughout Greek mythology and, Roman mythology or whatever is hubris.
True.
This is an example of hubris from Poseidon in that he's like, yeah, I broke this treaty, but you guys were going to find out anyway, so I might as well announce it in style and dare you to do something about it.
Yeah, for sure. It's also very political of, the scandal is bubbling about. I want to be the one to announce it rather than you find out from someone else trying to get ahead of the bad news press. Oh, it's like the Notes app
apology.
Oh, no. Oh, jeepers creepers. Gosh. So Clarice is also avoiding Percy. She's very clearly upset about the spear, but Percy wishes that she would just punch him because the only thing he hates more than someone not liking him is being ignored. And man, that's quite relatable for me.
Yeah.
Percy thinks he has some sort of anti-admirer, though, because someone puts a mortal newspaper. I like that becomes the definition of human stuff. Just calling it mortal always makes it sound like worse. I get what they are trying to say, but every time they say immortal this, it always seems like, to me in my brain, an inferior this. Ah, yes, the worst newspaper.
Dumping on journalism, just like the real world.
Oh, no.
It was a nice touch that it was the New York Daily News, though, right?
Yeah, it was nice to pick an actual newspaper I do think it would have been really funny, though, if they picked the New York Post, because then the headline could have been snazzier. The headline in this one says, quote, boy and mother still missing after a freak car accident. But if it was the Post, it would have been something filled with strange words and alliteration like traumatized tot still missing after torrential rain, something to that effect. Just silly words for people, but
Tot is so accurate. You're so right about that.
tot is there, bozo is there, creep is there. When
They might have done like tween though. Tot, he's a little old to be a tot.
Yeah,
Tot's
yeah.
usually like 5.
Right. Tween is probably what they would have done. The Post is very rough at times, but when Cuomo stepped down and finally admitted to his whole scandal situation, they just had a big picture of him looking very, very upset. And the caption at the top just said, creep, and nothing else. It was the most Post thing possible.
Wonderful stuff.
But alas, not the Post, the New York Daily News. So we get a mostly normal headline with a mostly normal body under it. The author was Eileen Smythe, which I did Google to see if that was A, real person, or B, some sort of reference, but it was nothing. It just felt like a fun name and too fun to be made up, but maybe Rick's really good at making names.
Perhaps you put it into one of those weird name generators. Do you think there's like a journalist name generator out there?
Ooh, a journalist version of the Wu-Tang Clan name generator?
Yeah, exactly.
I like that. So this article says that Sally and Percy are still missing after their mysterious disappearance. It mentions the car. It mentions that they left hastily under mysterious circumstances. But then, Smelly Gabe says that Percy has expressed violent tendencies in the past. And then the article says that the police, of course, wouldn't say if Percy was a suspect, but they haven't ruled out foul play. You've got to be kidding me. Smelly Gabe, I hate you so much, I didn't think I could hate you anymore. What are you doing here? Not surprised that NYPD, though, is completely dropping the ball here, though. That feels pretty on brand.
NYPD probably involved in Smelly Gabe's poker games. Just a thought. Just a thought.
Ooh. Would not be surprised.
Perhaps Eileen Smythe should be investigating this.
Come on, Eileen. Get on it. Oh, God. I just said come on, Eileen.
Shura, shura. Wait. Now this has to be a theme because you sorry Miss Jackson in the first 2 episodes of this podcast.
Oh, yes. Yeah, just got to find ways to work as many songs into this as possible. So Percy's understandably furious and goes to bed. He has a nightmare where 2 large Greek men are fighting on a beach. One is wearing a blue robe and yells, "Give it back," to the other who's wearing a green robe. And Percy feels some sort of internal need to stop them. He yells at them to stop, but then a voice from below the ground says, "Come down, little hero." And then the sand splits and Percy falls into the hole in the earth, and then he wakes up. And this has happened before. He had another dream earlier where again he heard a voice from underneath the ground, and that one was between a fighting horse and an eagle. I am sure that someone who knows more about Greek mythology knows exactly what is going on. We are going to do specific Greek mythology episodes with Moya to recap all the stuff that happened. I'm assuming that the horse is Poseidon, the eagle is Zeus, and the voice underneath the ground is Hades. And then similarly for the robes, I'm guessing blue robe could be Poseidon because of water, or also because of Zeus because of the sky, and then the green could be the water, I guess. So one of them is Poseidon, one of them is Zeus, one of them is Hades. That is my guess/interpretation. We'll see if anything gets explicitly revealed later.
I love how willing you are to not only put yourself on the record, but excitedly put yourself on the record. Put yourself on wax with the potential to be just flagrantly wrong.
It worked out for me in the past. Most Potterless merchandise is about me getting things wrong. So it's a foolproof scenario.
Do it for the jokes.
But I mean, it's a best case scenario either way. If I make a wild prediction and I'm correct, I get to take victory laps. If I'm wrong, everyone gets to make fun of me forever. And then everyone else gets to have fun. And I'm not too full of myself to not laugh at myself. Laughing at yourself is really fun.
No, those are all reasonable predictions, and we will see if they come to fore.
Mm-hmm. So Grover comes in later. He says that Mr. D wants to see Percy. And apparently, Mr. D is very angry. And the reason we know this is that Grover said, quote, he wants to kill before stopping himself. So Dionysus, not a happy fella. maybe if Dionysus wanted to improve his mood, he could listen to the song Dionysus by BTS, because you cannot listen to that song and not feel ready to take on the world. It is a very good hype-up song. Highly recommend to everyone.
You're in the pocket of big BTS trying to get him to come on newest Olympian. Make a theme song for you.
Look, if there's any way that I can do anything with BTS, I'm happy to get into that pocket. And my wife would just be over the moon because she is the biggest army that I know. BTS army.
I gotta say, I imagine Dionysus, when I was learning about Greek mythology, to be way more fun than this. Although I guess that can be attributed to his punishment and not being allowed to drink wine.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that at some point, he is not in charge of the camp anymore, and we can get fun Dionysus, but who's to say? I am aligned with you, though. I am not a fan of grumpy Mr. D. I hope we get full-fledged Dionysus.
Did you ever have a teacher named Mr. D? I had a band teacher named Mr. D. So every time Mr. D came up, this is who I pictured.
I never had a Mr. D. My school was very much more formal, and we called everyone by their full last name. I don't think we had a whole lot of nickname teachers in my K through 8 at the very least.
I see.
So on the walk over to the big house, Percy notes a nasty storm that is approaching the camp, but Grover explains that bad weather always avoids the camp. But this storm in particular looks very rough. Now, it's still business as usual at the camp, but Percy does notice that a lot of other campers are eyeing the storm as well. So here's some storm foreshadowing for sure. So they approach the big house, and Mr. D and Chiron are playing pinochle against 2 floating hands of cards. So I don't know if they're playing invisible people or if they've enchanted the cards where they're playing, I guess, against the computer, if you will. But I found this to be very interesting. I would love to have this so that Kelly and I could play spades against floating cards, because I love playing spades, but you need 4 people.
Yeah, this is a good pandemic invention.
Ooh, yeah. Now, Mr. D is super pissed. He talks about wanting to make Percy spontaneously combust, or wanting to turn Percy into a dolphin and sending him back to his father. So, very grumpy Dionysus boy.
Although, Greek mythology is littered with people getting turned into animals and doing cool stuff for the rest of their lives.
It's very true. It's very true. Being a dolphin, I mean, you'd still be really smart. It's cool.
It's kind of like the next best thing. Maybe it's better. Who knows? Never been a dolphin.
Neither have I.
Being a human hasn't been great for the last 5 years.
Too real. So Chiron keeps him in check. Dionysus then mentions that there is one other option, but he thinks that it is foolish. He says Chiron can explain because he needs to head to Olympus for the emergency meeting, which feels very important. And I'm assuming it is about what we are about to learn about, but I'm not sure if this is some other additional emergency meeting. He teleports in a very cool way where he becomes similar to a hologram and then wind and then vanishes, leaving only a scent of grapes. That sounds really cool.
And then didn't he change something into a ticket to go to where he wanted to go? Seems like a cool power.
Yeah, he turned a playing card into an access card to get into Olympus,
right,
which I thought was pretty cool, but then would mess up the pinochle deck, wouldn't it? Because there'd be a card short.
Well, they're gods. They can figure it out. This sounds way more understated than disapparation. That is for sure.
It sounds way cooler and less daunting on your body, and also less risky because no splinching involved.
Exactly.
I feel like this is a better way to teleport.
I think only gods can do it, so, maybe it's some more limited access type of situation.
Yeah, this is like the private jet of teleportation.
Yeah, there you go. Wheels up, baby.
Yeah, shout out to Wheels Up. Every now and then, for some reason, I will get an Instagram ad for, hey, you should take a helicopter to JFK Airport, or hey, you should fly private on one of these things. I stress about whether or not to get Economy Plus. I even stress sometimes about to just not go above Economy Basic. Do I want to pay $25 extra so this airport treats me like a human being?
Is it worth it to choose my seat? I do need the aisle because I am going to drink a lot of water to stay hydrated so that I feel good when I land and not jet lagged, but I don't want to have to climb over a stranger, Mike.
But I don't know, that $25, I could get a couple sandwiches.
I am pretty tall, so, my legs are going to be squished in.
Oh, one day I'll be on a private jet. Who's to say? I got to get a fancy friend. So Chiron asks Percy what he thought of the Hellhound, and Percy is honest, which is nice. I like that he is not trying to put up some facade. He just says, this thing scared me, which is good. I like this. I appreciate this.
This is actually a really, I think, underrated detail here, because what you just said, Percy is 12, which is younger than he reads when you're just kind of forgetting as a 25-year-old reading the prose or whatever. So I have to constantly remind myself that he's 12 and think about how small and scared of the world that I was at the age of 12 if something like this happened. Or if you just dropped me off in New York City and said, find a taxi and find your way back up to East 104th and 1st Avenue. Or
East 104th and 1st Avenue.
Excuse me, sir. East 104th Street and 1st Avenue, sir. But 12 years old, 12. So he is very young and very, very immature. And so this is one of those things that constantly reminds us of that fact. He's not forced to put on this masculine facade. He's like, I was just scared.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
It's really nice. It's very refreshing. And I would hope that this is the kind of thing that could inspire young kids to follow in PJ's footsteps and be honest and be open and be vulnerable. It's nice. And I agree. I think he can read as older than 12 just because of how mature he is. I do still think he talks like a 12-year-old, which is nice for keeping in mind how old he is. But I agree. He does make decisions that at age 12, I would be way too scared to make.
It's funny because when you're 12, in your head, you think you sound 16. But when you talk, you are 12.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
He nailed that.
So Chiron says, oh, well, you're going to face much worse before you're done. And Percy says, done with what? And Chiron says, your quest, of course. Will you accept it? And I was very excited. Hooray, a quest. But then Percy very astutely points out, I don't know what the quest is yet. Can you tell me what it is before I choose? And Chiron says, the details are a bit tricky. And Percy then looks at the storm, and the sky and the sea appear to be clashing. So Percy just guesses to Chiron that Zeus and Poseidon are arguing over something that was stolen. And Chiron is floored and asks how he knew that. Percy explains that Annabeth overheard something about the theft, and then he's got his dreams, and Grover says, I knew it. And Chiron says, hush, satyr, which establishes Chiron's move of when he's angry at someone, he tells them to be quiet and then whatever they are, which I appreciated more when it was against Clarice, but I don't like him saying it to Grover because
it was borderline.
Yeah, it feels like he's going to approach Silence Woman levels of uncomfortableness.
Yeah, it was borderline.
Yeah. Calling him satyr, I don't know. Grover didn't really do anything wrong here, which made me feel like Chiron was being a little too harsh and a bit dismissive to be like, oh, you're just a lowly satyr, is what it felt like.
He's high-strung, though. Chiron is high-strung. He's lived through a lot, and he knows that this moment that is approaching them is very, very consequential, which we're about to find out.
Yeah, he's high-strung, but he also needs to get off his high horse.
Ooh, got him.
So Grover says that this has to be Percy's quest, and Chiron says that only the Oracle can determine this. So Chiron confirms that Poseidon and Zeus are, in fact, arguing over the stolen item, which is a lightning bolt. And then I remembered, oh, right, the book is called The Lightning Thief. Obviously.
Rack focus in Mike Schubert's brain.
And here we are. Obviously, we're going to have to figure out who the lightning thief is.
No, we actually don't figure it out. The lightning thief was just the friends we made along the way.
No, that was the joke I was going to make. I was going to say, let me just get my first guess out there. I think it's going to be the friends we made along the way.
Wow, we've podcasted together before.
Yes, we have. So my actual guess, though, here's what I've got first off the bat. And I also have a second guess, but here's what I wrote in my notes right after I read this sentence. My initial guess was, it's Hades because he knew about Percy and he was pissed about somebody else breaking the oath. So he wanted to pit Zeus and Poseidon against each other, and that's why he took it. That's my initial guess. I will have an updated guess after he talks to the Oracle.
Okay.
Chiron explains that it's Zeus's Master Bolt, which I guess is better than his Pokebolt and his Ultra Bolt. And his Great Bolt, etc. Way better than the Safari Bolt. But Zeus's Master Bolt is what all other lightning bolts are modeled after. It is the symbol of his power, and it is the first weapon made by the Cyclops for the War of the Titans. It is what sheared the top off of Mount Etna, which I guess is a mountain of health insurance, and it hurled Kronos from his throne.
That's a PPO right there, baby. Let's go.
Oh, God, I hate health insurance so much. Oh, it's the worst. America, why?
This podcast brought to you by hating health insurance.
This podcast brought to you by when I married Kelly and got to be on her insurance. What a huge day for independent podcast boy Mike Schubert. Gosh, that was a huge improvement.
Welcome to the hard pivot to the Medicare for All podcast. I'm Bobby Wagner. I am here with the host of this podcast, Mike Schubert.
Chiron ends the description of the Master Bolt by saying it makes hydrogen bombs look like firecrackers, which bringing some heat, Chiron. My goodness.
I had some questions about the parallels to human technology. Mm-hmm. We're training these demigods at this camp with swords and shields. But in the real world, they have these other weapons, but the gods' weapons are like tenfold of what the real world's weapons are. So like, and then they talked about how World War II was between two sides of the gods. And I was like, I don't know. I'm confused as to the scale of the different types of fighting, but alas, we'll just let it go because it's a kid's book.
Yeah, and we'll learn about Percy's sword later and how that all factors in, but my basic understanding is they are very much set in their ways of the weapons that they make, and these weapons only can affect godly type folks as opposed to the mortal weapons, and the godly weapons can't harm mortals and all of this, so I feel like it's just a creative workaround, so we get a Greek-themed book.
Yeah.
You kind of just have to write it off. But yeah, when you think about it a little hard, it goes, well, why don't they make magic Greek gun? Which is a thing in Hades, a video game. One of the things is just a gun, and you just play the game and you go, yeah, I guess.
I love like chronicling this through your experience playing Hades, the video game. I just found that very funny.
Thankfully, most people who've reached out say that they have liked that I'm talking about it a lot, and no one said shut up about the video game. Look, it's one of my very few insights into the world of Greek mythology, so this is all I got right now. These are the book one episodes. Cut me some slack, baby.
I don't think it's a bad thing. This is your experience.
Yes, and I'm glad that that is the take. Sometimes, though, even when I'm editing the show, I just think, man, I have referenced this video game a lot. I hope this isn't annoying. Maybe I'll get them to sponsor the show or something.
They almost should just be paying you, even though they're not sponsoring this.
Yeah, I got to reach out and be like, hello, I've already talked about your game so much on the pod.
They at least got to give you some DLC, brother. Come on.
Yeah, come on. Hook me up. Give me some good. Hello, and welcome to the lightning brief for this episode of The Newest Olympian. If you're listening to this episode the day it came out, October 18th, 2021, that means episode 2 of another podcast I'm working on is live. You may have heard I'm working on a limited run show called Modern Muckraker, a comedic investigative journalism podcast where I do deep dives into burning pop culture questions and make so many jokes and references that while listening, you feel like the Leonardo DiCaprio pointing meme the whole time. Our first episode answered when Spider-Man should take the subway instead of web swinging, and in episode 2, we addressed the question, is the budget of East High from High School Musical realistic for a public school in Albuquerque, New Mexico? So if you want to hear that, just search Modern Muckraker wherever you get your podcasts, or go to modernmuck.com. And speaking of other podcasts that I make some shows for Multitude, which is the independent podcast collective that the Newest Olympian is a part of, so thank you, Multitude, for having us. And if you want to listen to another show on Multitude that I make, there is a great one that you might enjoy called Meddling Adults. Meddling Adults is a whodunit game show where I serve as the host and guests compete to solve children's mysteries for charity. So these mysteries will come from classics like Encyclopedia Brown or Scooby-Doo, or 90s hits like Shelby Woo. You get points for each correct guess or bonus points for extra silliness, and whoever has the most points at the end of the episode earns money for a charity of their choosing. So it's very fun, it's very wholesome, you get to learn about some great organizations, and we're currently working on season 4. I'm very biased, but I think it's a great show that you will enjoy. So just search for Meddling Adults wherever you listen to podcasts, or go to meddlingadults.com. I'd also like to thank all the folks supporting the show on Patreon. If you go to thenewestolympian.com/Patreon, you can support the show and get access to a bunch of cool bonus content in exchange for doing so. We're making our way through the backlog of people to thank, but first I want to thank our newest Super God patrons, Alex Welch, Anna and Angelica Barak, and our newest Ultra God patron, Joaquin Rodriguez Clamor. And finally, I will move on to finishing out the backlog of God tier patrons to thank, so shout out to Julia Nichols, Matthias, Brian Burrell, Wishby, Charlie Bateman, Garrett Myers, Nobody, Maggie Denham, Cassandrak, Mary.ie, McKaylee Eggett, Caffeined, Alicia Backus, Cara Hoyer, Quentin Johnson, James Sabella, Cameron Jackson, Abby, Carrie Patterson, Joanna Furlick, Pan with a Plan, Rashka K, Laura Hegman, Angishka, Nina Nightingale, Cecilia, Jess Landau, Joel Walsh, Adit Mukherjee, Akila Bamidipati, Ruth Christian, Joy Laws, and Ali Fugate. And before we go, you'll hear ads from other sponsors making it feasible for me to do this as a full-time job. Again, these are locally inserted, so if you live in Turkey, don't be surprised if you hear a Turkish ad. And once those are done, we'll get back to this episode of The Newest Olympian. So Percy says it's lost, and Chiron says stolen. And Percy asks, by who? And Chiron goes, by whom? And narrator Percy goes, ugh, once a teacher, always a teacher.
This is always the worst grammatical correction. It's like, all right, you knew what I was talking about.
I don't know. Can you use the bathroom?
Oh, may I use the bathroom?
Do you want me to pee on the floor? So Chiron says, by you. And Percy goes, what? And reading the book, I audibly said, what? At my book, because this was confusing. So here's what's up. Zeus thinks that Percy stole it. It went missing during the winter solstice, and Zeus blames Poseidon. But since a god cannot take the power weapon of another god, he thinks Poseidon convinced a human to take it for him. Zeus's reasoning is that the Cyclops' forge is under the ocean, which gives Poseidon influence over the makers of the weapons. Zeus fears it was taken so that the Cyclops could make multiple illegal copies, which could then be used to dethrone Zeus. And Zeus wasn't sure which hero Poseidon used, but then Poseidon claimed Percy as his son, and then Zeus realized that Percy was in New York over the holidays, so he then suspects Percy.
I gotta say, I didn't remember this being so much about intellectual property and corporate theft, making illegal copies of the original lightning bolt.
The phrasing of illegal copies, I wrote it down, and then I looked at my notes, and I said, clearly that isn't what the book said, but the book does say, quote, illegal copies, which I just think is very
allegory?
funny.
Question mark?
Zeusbolt.mp3.exe. Oh no!
Really quickly, can I do an analogy about baseball?
Yes, bring it in.
The way that they talked about how gods are allowed to have their children go and steal stuff, but they're not allowed to do stuff to each other, and they're not allowed to step into each other's realms. A lot of unwritten rules, Mike.
Ooh.
A lot of unwritten rules here that I was trying to follow along. It's like when you hit a home run and you overly celebrate it too much and the other team gets offended, and then their next pitcher throws at you with a projectile that is very dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
You know, every society has unwritten rules, and they're all stupid.
Definitely. A lot of interesting rules that overcomplicate the whole situation and feels like if they would just, I don't know, communicate with each other, things would be fine.
It's a soap opera, though. You know, it's a family drama.
Yeah, it is. Percy says, quote, Zeus is crazy, unquote, because Percy has never been to Olympus. And then the storm worsens around the camp, and Grover warns that they don't use the C word to describe Zeus. And Chiron says that calling him paranoid is more apt. And I felt like this was accidentally ahead of its time, where I'm trying to not say the word crazy anymore, but for different reasons.
Yeah.
This just kind of felt like, oh, we're not using it just because it's going to make Zeus mad, not any sort of care for not using words that can be upsetting to anyone with any sort of mental health situation going on.
I like how easily they boil down the complicated elements of the gods and their problematic behavior, because ostensibly Zeus is the good guy, right? Like, he's the ruler, he is the one who overthrew the Titans and, you know, established order in the world and everything like that. But this is a 12-year-old who's sitting there being accused of something that he clearly didn't do, and Zeus is like already showing retribution towards him. It boils down, I think, a core theme in Greek mythology, which is that the gods are extremely petty and immoral by human standards in a lot of cases. And you're starting to understand that more and more alongside Percy, which I think is really important, even though this feels like a throwaway line of dialogue that's kind of funny. Like, don't call Zeus crazy. It's like, no, don't call him crazy. They're very vindictive and very vengeful.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see if we get to a point where we actually meet the gods and have conversations with them. I'm interested to see if they do kind of paint them as more along the lines of a bad guy, because I feel like it's common. You see it in Hercules, the Disney movie. All the gods are great and everything's cool, and Zeus is this nice dad, which is not accurate for the Greek mythology. And what we see so far, like you're saying, through Percy, is a bad impression of the gods. You've got parents who don't care about their kids. You have people getting angry and blaming people that are clearly innocent without further thought. So I think it's very interesting for this book to kind of paint the gods as the more complex, veering towards bad characters that they are when you actually read the mythology.
Yeah.
We'll have to see how that holds true if we eventually do have part of these books follow Percy to Olympus to speak with the gods, etc.
This was my first introduction to Greek mythology. And then when I actually started reading more Greek mythology stories, I took a Greek mythology class in high school. I felt like I understood qualitatively like what I was in for, because this series is actually kind of honest about that element of Greek mythology and the way that ancient Greek people felt about their gods at the time, which is like, they can be very magnanimous and righteous and all-knowing and all of these things that we associate with gods, but they also can be petty on a human level and evil on a human level when they choose to be. They play their favorites very much. And obviously that is a theme in this book, that the gods play their favorites.
Totally. So Chiron continues, quote, then again, Poseidon has tried to unseat Zeus before. I believe that was question 38 on your final exam. And narrator Percy goes, he looked at me as if he actually expected me to remember question 38, which... yeah. How are you going to remember that? Ridiculous. Love it.
I'll Venmo you $1,000 right now if you could tell me what question 38 on any final exam you ever took was.
What is your name?
They wait until halfway through the test. They're like, oh, what's your name, by the way?
In my defense, Percy took this test 2 weeks ago, and I haven't taken a final exam since senior year of college, baby, which was in 2014, which was a million years ago. So Percy recalls the question being something about a golden net where Hera, Poseidon, and other gods trapped Zeus and wouldn't let him out until he promised to be a better ruler. First off, love this. Second, can we start doing this to Congress? I would love it. Let's get more golden nets in the Capitol.
That's called accountability. Joe, if you're listening, I got a golden net right here.
He's just going to tweet something where the answer is, I think you even quoted this recently, where it's like, rich people need to be taxed more. And then you quote tweeted it with, gee,
We're all
wonder
trying to find the guy who did this.
You're in charge, Joe. Come on, man. Tax the rich, my guy. Do it. So Chiron says that Zeus and Poseidon have been arguing about this for months, and Percy, his whole appearance in being claimed, is the last straw. When Percy insists that he's just a kid, Grover explains Zeus's perspective. Zeus already suspects his brother, and now his brother admits to breaking the sacred oath and fathering a hero who could use the bolt against him, so kind of makes sense. Percy says surely Poseidon didn't really take it, and Chiron basically says, yeah, no one thinks he did, but Zeus has demanded its return by the summer solstice, which is in, 10 days, and Poseidon wants an apology for being called a thief on the same day. Classic grumpy old guy dispute.
Yeah.
Love this.
And they're playing politics, and then, of course, a 12-year-old has to answer for it.
Unfortunate. Chiron says that he hoped diplomacy would prevail, lol, but now war is on the horizon. He asks Percy what he thinks a full-fledged war would look like, and Percy goes, bad? And then Chiron hits him with this absolutely intense quote. Imagine the world in chaos, nature at war with itself, Olympians forced to choose sides between Zeus and Poseidon. Destruction, carnage, millions dead. Western civilization turned into a battleground so big it will make the Trojan War look like a water balloon fight. And then Percy goes, bad.
So these are the stakes, everybody.
Oh, he's so funny. I love this. So Chiron warns that Percy will be the first to feel Zeus's wrath, and then it starts to rain. It's raining in the camp. This never happens. Terrible omen. Percy, now knowing that he caused this, recognizes that he has to, quote, find the stupid bolt and return it to Zeus. Love the grumpy energy that he's bringing to it because, yes, this is ridiculous. This is so absurd that a 12-year-old has to go through all of this because two brothers are being big grumpy boys. It's obnoxious.
It's incredibly obnoxious, but I do think it is indicative of a core element of inter-god dynamics, which is that they just don't talk to each other ever for any reason. Like, this all could have been avoided with a conversation. Mike should have just picked up the phone and called him. We were reading the wrong signals through text.
Yep.
The tone was tough to pick up on.
This is all just seen through the lens of Instagram notifications and pictures and stories.
Subtweets.
And then inferring everything with the worst possible lens.
Yes.
So Percy is very much on the, fine, I'll do it approach, which I think is warranted. And he asks, where is it? And Chiron says that he thinks he knows where it is based on an old prophecy. But Percy has to accept first. Percy says, that's whack. Why can't you just tell me? And then Chiron says, you wouldn't accept it if you knew where it was beforehand. And Percy says, quote, good reason.
When I read that, I was like, okay, so why is he going to accept it now? You didn't specifically say why it's so bad, but you did confirm to him that it was so bad, and you're not exactly an exaggerator, Chiron.
I feel like Percy understands that he's got to do it because the downside is full-fledged war, which sounds pretty rough. And then also, as we'll learn in a little bit, Percy might have an ulterior motive for going on a quest like this.
You're starting to see the glimmer of the hero complex within him.
Totally.
There's a lot of self-doubt at first, obviously, and then it becomes an internal motivation. And then very often, as I said, with the gods and the demigods as well, it becomes a hubris thing. So we'll see if that is Percy's arc. So far, it seems like we are at the stage where he is beginning to develop a hero complex as he starts to understand his powers and his relevance, and the different campers whispering stuff as he goes by, and his ability to step into water and fight off more seasoned warriors than himself. So we are being hinted that that will be a theme going forward in this book.
Totally. So Percy accepts the quest after Grover's encouragement, and he states that it's better than being turned into a dolphin, at least.
I don't know. It might not be better than being turned into a dolphin. Kind of sounds like a cool life.
Mm-hmm. I think Dionysus specifically said a bottlenose dolphin, so maybe those aren't particularly cool. Look, I don't know much about dolphins, except that they are smart and apparently very aggressive in their mating tactics. But that's really all I know about dolphins. Consent is still good, dolphins. Come on. Chiron says that Percy should now approach the oracle, and he sends him to the attic of the big house. I knew it. I knew that was so sus when Chiron said, not a living thing. So I'm glad that I was right there. Obviously, I had no idea that it was the oracle, let alone what the heck is actually up there, because what? So Percy heads to the attic. It is a very on-brand attic. It's got old Greek books, various pickled body parts, and just generally a very musty vibe.
Is that what your attic was like? Did you have pickled body parts in your attic?
Let me clarify. It is the attic I expected for Camp Half-Blood.
Yes, on brand for the brand that they've established, but not on brand for my attic.
No.
I hope. I don't know. I've never really been up in my attic.
My attic in my parents' place is basically just old paper documents before everything was digital, various Christmas decorations, and then my dad saves every box from every fancy electronic thing. So you've got PS3 boxes, speaker boxes, and not the OutKast album. Lots of other just big boxes up there.
You never know when you're going to need to return that
You never
stuff.
know. It's such a dad move, but also now that I have bought some nice things in boxes, I've kept some boxes because what if I move? This box is exactly the right size of my Sonos speaker. I should keep the box for it.
It was created on an assembly line for the thing that I'm moving.
Exactly.
I get it.
But when you live in New York and your closets are the tiniest things, you have to really pick and choose the best boxes to keep. And it's kind of like a one in, one out thing that I have to do with coffee mugs now. You know, if I'm going to save a box, some other less important box has to go.
Nice. I like that.
But on the wall, there is a trophy head for Hydra Head number 1, defeated in Woodstock 1969. Is that when the Woodstock was?
Yes.
Is that what the concert was? I need to know everything about this.
What happened at Woodstock that was like Greek?
I think it just has to be, we will learn later about things that mortals cannot see, but godlike folks can see. Maybe while Jimi Hendrix was lighting his guitar on fire, there was a big battle going on behind the crowd and no one knew.
Maybe that was the battle.
Whoa.
Third eye, peeking open.
Jimi Hendrix, actually the son of, I guess Orpheus is a music one, but he's not really a god. Who would be a music
Apollo
god?
was also the music
Apollo?
god.
Okay, yeah.
He plays
Jimi
the
Hendrix,
lyre,
son of Apollo.
right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I know nothing. Now I'm going to get a bunch of emails. Oh, actually. Like, I bet Jimi Hendrix didn't even light his guitar at Woodstock. It was probably at some other concert. Anyway, as we all saw coming, there's an unwrapped, mummified woman in the attic. And as we all knew would happen, of course, it sits up and then it opens its mouth and it emits a green mist that has snake-like tendrils and hisses.
Yeah.
Cool. Not terrifying at all.
Everything
This is
is
great. Fine. Yeah. Definitely everything is fine meme energy right here.
I love the Oracle, by the way. I think it's such a powerful storytelling mechanism, plot advancing mechanism. I love a prophecy so much. I never get tired of them.
It is cool. And this prophecy in particular is very fun. Also, the way it comes about is cool. So Percy hears a voice in his head that says, quote, I am the spirit of Delphi, speaker of the prophecies of Phoebus Apollo, slayer of the mighty Python. Approach, seeker, and ask. And then narrator Percy says, quote, I wanted to say, no thanks, wrong door, just looking for the bathroom, but I forced myself to take a deep breath. So good.
We give the Oracle a couple more names and pretty soon it's going to be Daenerys level.
I've seen Game of Thrones. Totally. Mother of Dragons. She's got some other name, I'm sure. Percy can tell that the mummy itself isn't alive. It is just a vessel for the mist. And he can also tell that it's not evil. It's more like the three fates. Ancient, powerful, but distinctly not human. So PJ asks, what is my destiny? And then, the mist takes the shape of Smelly Gabe and his poker friends. Not loving this. I hate Smelly Gabe. I don't want Mist Smelly Gabe. Come on.
I still don't really understand thematically why this had to be the case, but, it's fine.
I have no idea why they did this. It doesn't make sense. Maybe it'll make sense later. I don't know. But the misty, smelly Gabe turns towards PJ and says, you shall go west and face the god who has turned. And then one of the poker buds says, you shall find what was stolen and see it safely returned. Another one says, you shall be betrayed by one who calls you a friend And then Eddie, the super, who also plays poker with them, feels like a really good move, though, to get your super on your side.
Exactly.
As much crap as I want to give Smelly Gabe, this is a good move.
It's like when you buy off the hall monitor.
Ooh, yeah. Eddie the super says, quote, "And you shall fail to save what matters most in the end." That sucks. Not great. Percy also thinks, that sucks. Don't love this. But here's where we get to Mike Schubert Wild Prediction Time.
Dun, dun, dun.
So originally, I was thinking the god who has turned is Hades. I do still think there's a chance of that, but if I want to go wilder, because I want to think that the book is not just going with the most obvious choice, I'm going to guess that it's actually Ares, because Ares wanted to start a war. Ares is the god of war. He knew that if Zeus and Poseidon got mad at each other, there would be bloodshed, which is right up Ares' alley. So that's my more wild guess than what appears to be the obvious choice of Hades. For finding what was stolen, I'm assuming that's the bolt. I know there could be a double meaning here, but I'm pretty sure it's just the bolt. Being betrayed by one who calls you a friend, I'm just going to guess here at this point that Annabeth and Grover go on the quest with Percy. We learn eventually that they do. I really can't see Grover betraying Percy, so I feel like it has to be Annabeth. I know that she has a vested interest in this quest going well. I feel like that could be it. The only thing I could see it being Grover is if you have the classic Harry and Ron getting mad at each other and Grover leaves situation, but I felt like it was more Annabeth. I will get into maybe thinking that it could be Grover when we learn a little bit later what's going on, but at least at this exact moment in time, I felt like it would be Annabeth here. And then failing to save what matters most makes me think that he's going to at some point have a chance to save his mom on top of all of this, but he's not going to be able to get it done. And even if he succeeds in getting the bolt back or whatever, I feel like there will be a point where he could save Sally and it's not going to work. And that is the failure, not the failure of the main purpose of the quest, if you will. Those are my wild predictions.
On wax. Mark them down.
It's locked in, baby. The mist then dissolves, and Percy asks, "What do you mean? What friend? What will I fail to save?" I love this. I love that he asks a lot of questions. This is so good. This is exactly what I would be doing right now.
I need specifics. As much as I like the Oracle as a storytelling technique, if it were me in the situation, I am a very indecisive individual, and I need to know a more defined path.
It's one of those things, I respect your vibe, but also, can you tell me what's happening? I am confused.
Yes, exactly.
So Percy shares the prophecy with Chiron and Grover, but he only shares the first two lines because he doesn't know which of his very few friends would betray him, and he doesn't like that line 4 is, "Oh, by the way, you're going to fail." So, natural for a 12-year-old to do here. Can't really put it past him.
Also, whether by accident or subconsciously, kind of like a leadership tactic. Because if he's going to be going on this quest, and we find out that he's going to be going on it with Grover and Annabeth, you don't want them thinking they're already defeated from the beginning.
Yeah.
And that affecting what eventually transpires in the quest. You want them being all in, and you want them thinking that you think you're going to succeed. Because if you're leading this quest, and you're the son of one of the big three, I do think that it is ultimately beneficial to not tell them that there is this real downer in the last two lines of his prophecy.
Yeah.
Because the more you know, like the more it starts to eat at you, and you start to ask yourself, this was obviously a huge theme in Harry Potter as well, which I'm sure you covered extensively at length about what the prophecy means and how it kind of emotionally scarred everybody who is involved in it.
Yeah.
And so the fewer people know the negative aspects of the prophecy, at least for now, I think the better. So I think this was the right choice, even if he didn't make it for the right motivations.
Yeah, I think that's right. I didn't have that interpretation, so I'm glad you've pointed that out. But I think it does make sense because you don't want it to become a self-fulfilling prophecy where everyone is paranoid that a friend is going to betray, so that everyone now is interpreting everything in the worst possible way. And then, yeah, you don't want to go into a quest thinking that you're going to fail.
It's like being a Mets fan.
Oh, we'll be getting into that later when the Yankee hat comes into play and I make fun of you for that. But Chiron can kind of see through Percy's stoic, quote-unquote demeanor. He reminds Percy that the words of an oracle can have double meaning, so don't get too upset based on the face value of what you've heard.
Percy has a terrible poker face. Should have been hanging out with Smelly Gabe more often.
Percy asks Chiron which god it is, and Chiron basically has the exact same suspicions of my first thought of Hades, which makes me feel like it's not Hades. I feel like YA books love a plot twist, and I feel like it being Hades is just too easy. So I'm really hoping my Ares thought is correct.
Yeah, they love a red herring.
You know? Percy thinks back to the voice from under the earth in his dreams and thinks, yeah, it's got to be Hades. And Chiron nods and says, it is the only possibility, to which I thought, okay, now I really think it's Ares, because Chiron is really invested, very, very set in thinking it's Hades. When Grover is shocked, Chiron points out that a Fury went after Percy only when she was sure of his identity, and the Furies only obey Hades. Grover retorts that Hades hates all heroes, but then Chiron points to the Hellhound, saying that they can only be summoned from the Fields of Punishment.
Also an analogy for Mets fandom.
Citi Field, the Field of Punishment. And it had to be summoned by someone within the camp, so Hades must have a spy that is looking to kill Percy before Percy can clear Poseidon's name. Percy is not thrilled at the prospect of two major gods in the big three wanting to kill him, but Chiron is really locked into this theory. A bit suspiciously so, to which I had some concerns of, I don't know what I would do if he turned evil. I don't know how I'd be able to handle this. So I'm really hoping Chiron isn't evil.
He's a bit of a moral center so far throughout this story.
Okay, a moral centaur.
I didn't even realize that. Whoops. The moral centaur. I like it. I'm leaning in. I'm doubling down. That's good. I meant to do it, actually.
Dad jokes. I'm really hoping Chiron's a good guy. I would be crushed if he was evil. So Chiron says Percy has to go to the underworld, find the bolt, and reveal the truth. And then we get a quote from narrator Percy. A strange fire burned in my stomach. The weirdest thing was, it wasn't fear. It was anticipation, the desire for revenge. Hades had tried to kill me 3 times so far, with the Fury, the Minotaur, and the Hellhound. It was his fault my mother disappeared in a flash of light. Now he was trying to frame me and my dad for a theft we hadn't committed. I was ready to take him on. Let's go, Percy. Let's do it. I like the self-motivation. I am here for it.
Hero complex activated.
Ka-ching. When Percy starts to think, also though, my mom is in the underworld, so the level-headed part of his brain politely reminds Percy that he is a kid and Hades is a god, so maybe not a surefire thing that you can get done.
I think that this part is important, though, because what makes demigods so important is that they are half human and they are half god. So that feels like an obvious thing to say, but humans do stupid, irrational stuff all of the time, and sometimes it works out. It's like your shirt right now, Mike, irrational confidence guy. The human side of it is giving him the irrational confidence because he doesn't quite understand the scope of the danger that he's about to get himself into. So when he says this and he's starting to feel himself a little bit, that is what gives him his power. That is what the gods don't have because they have too much perspective almost.
For the folks at home, I'm wearing a shirt inspired by the J.R. Smiths and the Dion Waiterses of the world that says Irrational Confidence Guy on it. Who knew how thematic this t-shirt choice would be for covering this episode? Look at that. Grover's nervous as heck, so much so that he starts eating the pinochle cards like they're potato chips. Very fun. Love that he's just a garbage disposal. Love it. He's the best form of composting, is give your waste to Grover.
Protect the environment.
Yes. Oh my God. He's Captain Planet. Percy is beyond nervous about this being Grover's quest. This is the one that has to succeed to get Grover's certification. And he's especially nervous because Percy thinks, I'm going to fail. But he hasn't told Grover. And then this is where I noted, this could be the betrayal friend thing. If at some point on the quest, Grover finds out that Percy didn't tell him the full story, didn't tell the full prophecy that mentions you're going to fail, Grover could get very upset. Why would you let me go on this quest knowing that we're going to fail? I needed to succeed. Otherwise, I fail my certification. And then maybe Grover gets really upset and leaves. That is the case for Grover being the friend. The only thing I have for Annabeth is it's similar, but again, both of his friends have a vested interest in this quest being successful. And I feel like betrayal of the friend is most likely going to happen when they learn Percy isn't telling the full story. That's my guess.
They have planted a bit of a flag of a schism between Annabeth and Percy because of who their parents are, though.
Right.
Like Annabeth has brought that up at multiple points up to this point in the story. That's a very powerful thing in this world of cliques, in this world of acceptance, is who is your parent and what does that mean for who you are? And Percy's obviously this hotshot coming in, and Annabeth has been there for a very long time. So there are sort of entrenched personality conflicts within these two characters that you're seeing so far.
Yeah. It's very much buddy cop movie of the hotshot rookie and the seasoned veteran.
Even though they're both 12.
Yeah, yes, they are both children. So Percy brings up a good point. If we think it's Hades, why can't a god just go get it? And Chiron says that gods can only cross into the other realms via invitation, which feels
unwritten rules are here again.
Yeah, the unwritten rules, very convenient. But heroes can do whatever they want, and no god can be held responsible for a hero's action. So Percy snaps back, pointing out, oh great, I'm being used. And Chiron says, not quite. It's just not an accident that Poseidon has claimed you now. Desperate times call for desperate measures. And this is where I realize, oh, okay. Now this makes sense, because previously this made no sense at all. But now it's understandable. Chiron says he needs you. And at this quote, Percy has a big rush of emotion. He feels excited. He feels loved. He feels important. He loves the notion of his dad needing him. But then he starts to have some more complex thoughts. Narrator Percy says, quote, I didn't know whether to feel resentful or grateful or happy or angry. Poseidon had ignored me for 12 years. Now suddenly he needed me. And this is just really natural. It is completely natural for someone to initially think, oh, wow, cool. Oh, wait. And just to generally be confused. And I like that. I really do. He's such a real character. It's great.
It's nice that he's dealing with this at 12 so that he doesn't have to grow up to be a Hollywood film director who is dealing with his father issues at age 53 and making an intergalactic space movie about it.
Is that a specific reference or just a cliche?
Just every space movie is actually about how the guy on the journey is out searching the acceptance of his father.
Like Ad Astra, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But it's just about dads. More like Dad Astra.
There have been two distinct times in my life where I saw a movie because people were telling me this is a great movie and it's going to win all of the Oscars. It was Shape of Water and Ad Astra. And both of those movies suck. Those movies aren't good. And even if they're good, they're not good. Like, you could say Kong vs. Godzilla. It's not a good movie, but it's a good movie.
You were entertained.
Yes. Shape of Water was fine, and so was Ad Astra. I would have much preferred different films, though.
All I'm saying is all films are about people working out issues with their fathers.
Trying to think of the least version of that could still fit is... Man, I was going to say Talladega Nights, but that totally is.
All about fatherhood.
Damn it. It works. It's foolproof. Man, even good ones like Parasite. Wow. Oh my God, everything.
Harry Potter is all about working it out with his father, too.
Jeez. So Percy then says to Chiron, you've known I was Poseidon's son all along, haven't you? And Chiron says, I've had my suspicions. And he cites his chats with the oracle. Percy thinks that there's a lot of some big prophecy that's being left unsaid, but I don't know. Maybe Chiron will tell me later. Percy then says, quote, so let me get this straight. I'm supposed to go to the underworld and confront the Lord of the Dead. And then Chiron goes, check. Find the most powerful weapon in the universe. Check. And get it back to Olympus before the summer solstice in 10 days. That's about right. I looked at Grover, who gulped down the Ace of Hearts. It's good. I also love the Mission Impossible style recap, where you get the whole thing, and then before the mission starts, they go, just in case any of this was confusing for you if you're at home, here are the stakes.
A bullet point list. Yeah, it's very useful.
It's good, and I'm sure it's very good for 12-year-olds or younger people reading the book as well.
Well, it's good to know. I mean, it's like what I said earlier, where this is sort of a demarcating line in the book where this quest starts and it is kind of like a video game where you're approaching different checkpoints. It's good to know what those checkpoints are heading into it, and then what kind of diversions they will have to take along that way.
Mm-hmm. So Percy doesn't feel right asking Grover to go with him due to the risk, but after gathering himself, Grover says that he is up for it. Percy is relieved since his friendship with Grover is pretty much the only friendship that he's had last more than a few months, so he's very happy to have someone he's so close to along for the ride. Percy astutely asks, where the heck do we go? Since the oracle only said west, and Chiron says that the entrance to the underworld also moves, but it's always to the west. And right now, it's in America, because Olympus is in America, and of course, it's in Los Angeles. Of course!
I have a lot of thoughts about the New York-Los Angeles dichotomy here. As someone who lived in New York and now lives in Los Angeles.
I mean, as someone that lives in New York, I love it, because I am not a fan of when people say, everything is skewed towards the big cities. Yeah, because they're really cool, and a lot of people live here. I am sorry, but the reason everyone talks about New York is because it's a really cool city.
I was just like not quite sure why by default the entrance to hell is in Los Angeles, because there are parts of New York that feel like you're already in hell. It's very humid, very hot in the summer. You go underground more frequently in New York into the subway. But, if it has to be to the west, I suppose I understand why they chose Los Angeles. It's also like he has to go all the way across the United States.
Yeah.
That makes it more digestible.
I think that's part of it. I think it's fun to pick a big major city. He's not going to pick, I'm not going to even say a city to not upset anyone, but he's not going to pick Midland, Texas. I said a city. But Los Angeles, it's the westernmost major city that everyone, whether you're in America or not in America, you know about it. So from a series perspective, it makes sense so that everyone reading knows what's up. The only one that could have been more on brand is if they picked Death Valley, though. That would have been fun.
I thought about that too. But I feel like not a lot of people even really know what that is. They just know the name and that it gets really hot.
Yeah. Oh, wait, Vegas? Vegas would have been a better choice. It should have been Vegas.
Yeah, maybe it should have been Vegas. There were a lot of scoundrels living out there.
Sin City? Los Angeles is literally the city of angels, so it feels weird to have the entrance to hell there. Las Vegas feels very on brand. Maybe it's too on brand, and that's why Rick didn't pick it?
Maybe. Although, not everyone who goes to the underworld is not an angel. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
In Greek mythology, you can be
Sally Jackson.
Be having a good time in the underworld.
Yeah.
You don't have to be in the fields of punishment.
Right. Percy thinks, oh, cool, let's just hop on a plane. And Grover goes, no, have you ever been on a plane in your life? And Percy goes, oh, yeah, I haven't. I thought that was just because of money. But Grover says, no, it's because Zeus is god of the sky. So you're just asking for trouble if and this is my wording, not the book's, unoethical child of the sea god goes into the sky. Woo! Dad jokes aplenty on this episode. Chiron says that one other person is permitted to join the quest, and she has already volunteered. And Percy, knowing who this is going to be, says, gee, feigning surprise, who else could be stupid enough to volunteer for a quest like this? And then Annabeth reveals herself after taking off her magic Yankee, not Mets, Yankee cap. We'll discuss this next episode because we're over time, and if we start arguing about our favorite baseball teams, we'll be here for 35 years. But Annabeth says, quote, I've been waiting a long time for a quest, Seaweed Brain, which is good. I knew that Seaweed Brain was a thing. I don't know if she said it one other time before, but now it is clearly established as her playful insult that'll certainly become pet name when they become a thing, I'm guessing, if they become romantically interested. It's either friendship fun deprecating nickname or lover fun deprecating nickname.
It's negging, bro. Come on.
Yes.
Classic middle school romance tactic.
Annabeth continues, Athena is no fan of Poseidon, but if you're going to save the world, I'm the best person to keep you from messing up. And then Percy replies, quote, if you do say so yourself, I suppose you have a plan, wise girl? And then her cheeks get colored. Ho ho ho. Not only is it Luke that can make AB blush, but PJ has also entered the realm. Ho ho. Annabeth then says, do you want my help or not? And then Percy just drops all facade because he recognizes, yes, I certainly need Annabeth's help. I will be screwed without her. So he says, a trio. That'll work, which feels very classic YA novelty to have a trio, but we're reading a YA book, so it's going to happen. Chiron says he can take them as far as the bus terminal in Manhattan, but after that, they are on their own, and it is time to get packing, and it's also time for us to get packing, because that's the end of Chapter 9 and the end of this episode of The Newest Olympian. Bobby, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
This was a blast. You'll be back for the next episode where we talk about Chapter 10, but in the meantime, if people want to find you doing stuff in the week in between, they want to hear your voice or see anything else you're doing, where can they do so?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at bwags. You can follow my baseball podcast if you are interested in baseball or labor rights or just me making a lot of jokes with my best friend on a podcast at tipping_pitches. And you can follow that podcast wherever you get your podcast, Tipping Pitches.
Tipping Pitches is a great show. It's very fun.
Mike has been on 3 times.
Yes. Those episodes are the best. Also a great Twitter account, much like Horse is to basketball. I think Tipping Pitches is a great way to get introduced into baseball. And the Twitter account is a great way just to see funny baseball stuff. Even if you don't watch baseball, it's just a funny Twitter account alone. So highly recommend checking that out.
Thank you. That's very kind.
Bobby, thank you for joining. Listeners, thanks for listening. And for this sign off, Bobby, since you are a big baseball guy, I have to take the Percy Jackson pun that I've been making, but put a little baseball flair on it because this episode is hitting the air to deep left field. There it goes, Percy!
And so that'll make it a 4-0 ball game.
Oh, that's a whole different one. I was going for the Michael K, not the whatever the Reds guy is. Hoi. Hey, thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Newest Olympian. This podcast was created, hosted, and produced by me, Mike Schubert. I also run the website and the social media. Our editor is Sherry Guo. The music is by Bettina Campamanes and Brandon Grugel, and the art is by Jessica E. Boyd. If you want to learn more about the show, such as what chapters we're covering in the future, you can go to thenewestolympian.com. If you want to support the show and also get access to sweet things like our patron-only Discord, where you can talk about the podcast or the books with friends, you can support the show via Patreon by going to thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. If you want to find us on social media, we're at Newest Olympian on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and we're on reddit.com/r/thenewestolympian as well. Of course, want to give a huge shout out to our producer level patrons: Lauda Bartova, Kelsey Gillespie, The Damn Steam Nuggets, Emma Cooey, Vicky Garcia, Ellie Hoskovchova, Veronica Bartova, Natanya Page, Haley Hastings, Robin Garcia, Frida Vikstrom, Megan Moon, Tough Beifong, Moo Productions, Don't Call Me Nymphadora, Olivia Y, Craig McRoberts, Griffin Dork, Taylor Payne, Giselle Salvador, Minka Dreesen, Can't I Seaweed Brain, Matt Barger, Peter Johnson the Twin, Sabrina Balsiger, Mooney B, Boney Pony, Harlan Christ, Heather McMillan, Casey Canales, Polly Burge, Nikki Harris, Tatiana Schmidt, Sandra Rose, Bridget Lowry, Josh Wilkie, Martin Anvik, Abby Ryan, Josh Clements, Angela MF, Mary Baumgartner, Shannon Yvanes Aguilar, Wise Girl, Alpacas Are Hope, and Joaquin Rodriguez Clamor. If you want to help out the show non-monetarily, spreading it via word of mouth is huge. You can talk about it on social media. You can reach out to someone that you think who would like the show. You can write a letter to your congressman. I don't know. Anything spreading the word of the podcast really does help. And hopefully you will tune in to our next episode, again, back with Bobby, talking about chapter 10. But until then, thank you for listening, and I'll see you later.